Hey everybody, my name is Lester Martin from Starburst, Dev Advocate here, and we're going to try again to do episode number 4 of my recurring Ask Me Anythings. I'm hoping that there'll be a bunch of folks here. I got my windows all set up, I think, where I can see my chat. I can see my screen right here. I think I see my pretty face here on the screen as well, or my face, maybe. And like always, the intention is not necessary to give a presentation. It's to answer some questions and whatnot. And I think I saw one or two early questions. So I'm going to see if I can see those comments in a second or not. I'm not so sure. Hey, there we go. I see someone out there. So that's awesome. Good news. And as I was saying, interrupt me at any time because today what I have to present, because I did learn another lesson. It was that in these activities, there's some contact information if it's useful to you. DevRel at Starburst.io. Plenty of good things like our community forum. Just go to Starburst or Starburst community, you'll find us. Um, but the goal is to talk about stuff, hear thoughts and ideas from that you might have that you're interested in learning about, or maybe and it doesn't have to just be technology. It could be how we're using the technology. Actually, those are usually more interesting conversations. And you see some almost ask me anything stuff there. Keep it professional. I'll keep the sales pitch down, and we should all keep the vendor bashing down as well. So all the way around. That goes for me too, not just bashing others. Don't bash my company either. So that said, I did learn to have some information available to kind of get it started, especially since there's a little delay here once it gets started and people get here. And these do get recorded and they're worth hanging on to and looked at later. So I see no comments necessarily yet, even though I think there was one that someone had a question they had that maybe I'll have to go back and look at the original invite. Maybe that's where it got added. So I will talk about something. What am I going to talk about today? I'm talking about Apache Spark. And those that know Starburst, Trino, we are Trino Plus company primarily, might be asking why the heck is Lester going to, in his copious free time, talk about Apache Spark? Well, I'll tell you, because one of the products that we have is called Starburst, sorry, the Dell Data Lakehouse. It's a partnership. It's on our products page. We have our install your own stuff, Starburst Enterprise. We have run it in the cloud, Starburst Galaxy. And then we have our Dell Data Lakehouse powered by Starburst. So an appliance with our stack in it and with Dell's hardware, with Dell's object stores, all that kind of cool stuff. And one thing they announced not too long ago was that that appliance in a future rev, and I'm not going to tell you the exact date, but in a future rev will include an Apache Spark implementation in there. Why? Because people do things like Trino and Spark, believe it or not. Shouldn't be that hard of a stretch. So I am finishing up a blog post and corporate video and all that good stuff about how Trino and Starburst and Spark all play well together. This is not comparing all that. This is just talking about Spark. And it's really just super high level stuff, more technical stuff, but it just, might as well throw a few things on screen, general purpose data processing framework for a variety of workloads. I think most that might be attending this would already know that, have already heard that. And if anyone's new here, showing up, interrupt me. We want to talk about other stuff that's on your mind, and if you have nothing on your mind that you want to share, just listen in and see if these drives any questions. Okay, so Spark, absolutely. Apache Spark is like Trino, can read a lot of different things, a lot of different kinds of systems. But in fairness, Trino, Apache Spark is really built for, geared around going at these repositories of file formats, modern table formats, so on and so on. So we're really talking about the same data. We talk a lot about Iceberg here nowadays, but even before Iceberg became very popular years ago, we still had the same kind of dilemma. I threw something on the screen here. I don't want to walk through all this. I will just say a few quick points. Generally speaking, Spark does not have a runtime environment. It needs a runtime environment. Just like Cloudera customers will run it all on a Hadoop yarn and If you're building your own, you have some options. Probably third-party providers are probably using Kubernetes. And I wrote a little bit of a tagline at the bottom that says there are other companies that may use some of these, some or one or none of these, or may do their own thing. My hunches are not going too far off of these set of stacks, and you see some companies listed out here. So we need to run it somewhere. So you need somebody to help you, and that somebody could be you. It's Apache Spark, open source. You got the hardware, run it. As we look a little higher up, though, I'd say if you look at the top, think of Spark primarily, Apache Spark primarily as a programming interface. So we got a couple different languages that they support to do work in that space. I left a few other things that I didn't color code here. Come to my blog or ask me about them. I'll talk about a little bit more there. I've got a longer format that I can ramble to that. I'll put all those in the chats probably when we're done, just so you have them. If you were here, you'll probably get notified of those messages. In the middle, though, is what's going on is this. Yeah, there's a core API called RDDs. I'm not even going to worry about that for now. I would just say that there's a layer above that called the Data Frame API, sometimes just called Spark SQL. And that is the foundation that most people are using today. So if you have data that has some level of structure, absolutely, this is the place to be. And there's a graphing engine, of course. But really, probably the two additional libraries beyond just batch applications and stuff is the machine learning library and the structured streaming framework. So again, high level ecosystem. Again, I think also most people probably know this that are here. If you do or don't, the good news is it's a programmer's framework. So guess what? There is always going to be a CLI for everything. There's a command line interface called the shell or PyShell, PySpark, call it whatever you want. And I would encourage people that are relatively new to Spark, spend a little time there. Maybe not the first thing you do, but like the second or third thing you do, and then work your way back to where you'll probably do most of your work, which is in some kind of web-based notebook, such as Jupyter, such as Zeppelin, or some other tool. Why? Because you can run little snippets of code. You can still do your exploration, your trial and error, or just do your job, but you can do it more than one line at a time. You can easily reproduce stuff. You can talk to other frameworks because these notebooks aren't tied to Spark or even Python. They can do lots of things. And then you get some kind of poor man's visualization tools as well. Okay, I think I pulled this out. Okay, well, maybe I didn't. I really thought I pulled this out. Well, that shows you a lot. You know what? I think I have the wrong, man, I thought I trimmed this down. So let me punch through. I've only put 30 seconds on the clock here, 30 minutes on the clock here to talk. I still haven't seen any questions that anyone's asking. So I'll jump to since I left these in here, I'll jump to some of the key points I want to say. The underlying, no matter what API you use, the underlying system runs on a concept called resilient distributed data sets. It just means like Hadoop, like Trino, like everybody else, data sets are so big, we break them into pieces, and the pieces run on the servers on our cluster. Okay. They use the term partitions, a pretty popular term. Trino, we would call that a split, if you're familiar with that. The APIs are heavily oriented toward functional programming. There's a lot of information packed on that slide. I'm more than glad to go into it. And again, I'm going to post some longer form videos where I really walk through these slides. I thought I trimmed them down much more than this. I'm not sure why I left it this big. And there's an example without going into it and try to explain it. There's an example pretty much of a word count solution and that underlying RDD. So you have functions like flat maps and reduced by keys. And if the smart people out there, everyone's smart, but the aware people might notice some of those functions have the word map in them. Some have the word reduce in them. Is this a map reduce framework? Well, dirty secret is they're all map reduce frameworks. Oh my. Okay, that's enough for Lester to get in trouble. Boom, might hurt your head. That's okay. We're not trying to learn the API. I was just giving you a dose of something to glance at. I really thought I streamlined all this. So I don't want to Trino versus Spark. Yeah, that's a great question. So when or where and why? Is that the question, Trino versus Spark? I would say if that's the question, and Jay, you can feel free to add some more to that, I would say that in fairness, Trino versus Spark, and I'm going to go up a couple slides, and say, look at this ecosystem because I think it'll help us answer that question. So it depends what you're doing. Absolutely. So if you're doing hardcore training, ML models and all that good stuff, and your two choices are Trino or Spark, not an and or anything, absolutely, you're going to do that with Spark. Spark was created because machine learning algorithms got ported to Hadoop. Now people didn't have to sample their data set because of the size of the machine. They had a cluster, and they were so happy that they could start doing on their entire data sets. The more you train on, the better your answer is. They just didn't like how long it took. So instead of enhancing Hadoop, they made their own thing, called it Spark. And all it really did is said, hey, why don't we hold on to processes, and why don't we be able to cache data sets in memory? And that worked really good for machine learning. So long story short, machine learning, heavy training the model, all that good stuff, deploying the model, likely you're talking about, if those are your two choices, polar choices of Trino slash Starburst and Spark. Absolutely. Now, just regular batch transformation jobs, you know, in fairness, it comes down to what you like to do. Do you like to be a programmatic based transformation data engineer, or do you like to be a SQL based transformation data engineer? So I think that's a big way to kind of look at that. Good question. I'm going to come to that one next. Great question about that. So transformations, to be honest, you can do those with SQL. And if you do them with SQL, you can do them on Trino with just scripts, or you can use a DBT to help do that, or you can further orchestrate that with Prefect or Dagster or something. Just like you can take all those same Spark jobs. So I would say in the transformation space, you have a lot of options here, and it really does come down to taste and flair and choice as much as anything else there. And I think that's why we have a good chance, a good story to tell to go after some of those transformation workloads. If you go to streaming, and there's other questions, I'll get there since I'm just looking at hitting on this. I would say that if you went at streaming, you say, I really, really want to have a great answer for streaming. Well, up until recently, and I'd say in the last year or two, we necessarily didn't have a streaming framework per se. And we have two of those solutions now. We have a Kafka to Iceberg based solution. We have a files on S3 to Iceberg solution, but I wouldn't go as far as to say those are anywhere as rich as Spark's structured streaming framework. That is a itself is a complex event engine. It's not a simple event engine where we just look at record and everything's mutually exclusive. You can do windowing, you can do averaging, you can do all kinds of funky stuff. And it's been out there for some time, and there's a lot of people running production on it. So definitely in the streaming space, and Trino itself doesn't have that. So you need Flink, you need Spark Streaming. And this is where I meant these are frenemies. These aren't one or the other. They're like everything else. There's a lot of tools. You need to pick out which are the best tools for you in your shop. And that's never, for me, for doing this for 30 years and maybe only 15 in the big data space, as a software guy for 30 years, there's never a perfect answer. There's always lots of good answers. So a lot of it is going to depend on what you choose to do, what you're being told to do, and that kind of stuff. So, Jay, I don't know if I answered your question enough, but come back and ask it more specifically. If not, and I'll come back there. So there's another question from Vinaj, and if I pronounce it wrong, I apologize. Does Pi Starburst mimic Pi Spark functionality? I think the short answer is it mimics the API. So let's go over here, Lester Martin blog, and this is my own personal blog, and I'll just look down here. I got a tag called Pi Starburst, just in case anyone doesn't know anything about this. Again, more things I'll put in the chat after the fact, but if you go down here and maybe look at my first one of these, I would say Pi Starburst. So just like there's Pi Snow that Snowflake has and others, this is a way to say, hey, could I have something like that? Could I have something that says, hey, table gives me a table. I've got a data frame. Could I use the select method? Could I use the filter? Show. Can I have an API, kind of a Python based environment that looks like I'm doing PySpark and call it Pi Starburst? You could, but it doesn't mimic under the cover. So it mimics the API, just like there's several data frame APIs out there, as we can probably all guess. Again, I'll point you to some of these. In the meantime, if you're looking, you just go to lestermartin.blog and you'll find some of these. But if you look below, you'll see it. Or another table is going to show you a join this data frame with that data frame. The trick here, and I think I show it here, is what's happening. There's an example of a data frame and another data frame that we do a join with the original data frame. The question, I'll get to it, Vinaj, apologize again, is that what we're doing in Starburst is we're ultimately taking all that data frame code and hitting that action that says show or save or whatever. And then we're saying, cool, let me submit that off. And we ship it over to Trino, and then Trino gets SQL. And Trino builds a query plan inside of Trino, and Trino runs it. And in this blog post, I don't want to show all of it, but you know, like let's see if that toggle works still. It's sending over a SQL statement, and then that SQL statement becomes a query plan. And just for fun, just like in regular Starburst, Spark, you can do stuff like that. Just write a SQL statement. And guess what? This one actually, the SQL statement's a little tighter because I wrote it a little tighter. But what you would expect when you went and looked at those two queries in Trino, you expect them, maybe not the entry point to be the same, but you expect the query plan to be the same on the other side. So it's going to run in that world itself. So hopefully that helps. Yes, it mimics the experience of, it mimics the API of, it doesn't mimic how Spark executes, but it mimics getting the answer that you wanted and that kind of stuff. Good question. No, Starburst is not built on Spark. Starburst is built on the fact that we already had a Python API, or more of a Python connection, and then we implemented behind the scenes, what they do when you write all that data frame code. You're building this lineage of all those data frames, and then pretty much at some point, somebody has to kind of figure out that query plan. We don't client side figure out the query plan. We just amass, and it could look ugly because the client doesn't necessarily try to refactor it for you. Sends it over and it relies on the CBO, the cost-based optimizer inside Trino to go, okay, good SQL or bad SQL, as long as the data is the same statistics, so that we should be able to get the same kind of job to run, the same kind of performance. So not actually built on Spark. No, no, no. And there are a few things, for picking on it. We have an internal doc. We don't have it to share publicly right now, but we have an internal doc that shows Starburst, Snow, and Starburst, at least, maybe others. And we do a function by function parity, to see what's missing, or is there subtle nuances. And there are subtle nuances across those three. I would say the thing that we are missing today, and I hate to admit it, but I'm your trusted advisor, doggone it. All four of you out there, and the 4 million are watching this later. We didn't publicly support doing UDFs the same way you do them in Starburst. PySpark. That won't necessarily work the way it works there. We have two different solutions that have been baking around for some time. I don't think we finalized the exact way we're going to implement that. So that's one that if I was hardcore in this space and you were trying to move a bunch of existing PySpark code, you might say, where do I take advantage of UDFs themselves, in code functions and that kind of stuff. And it's not that we can't have an answer, but the answer might be a little bit of a hybrid. Maybe we take that Python code and build it into Trino and say, because Trino has a way to, declare a UDF via kind of from the SQL interface. So we can declare the function there and just reference it in our SQL statement. So there's ways to get there, but it's not exactly the same, but pretty darn close. Those are great questions. In fact, that's really when I was starting this thing off a month or so ago, 2 months ago, maybe, when I started doing these Ask Me things, this is really what I'm hoping to get into. Just Q&A. I got a question, I got a thought, or I got an idea. Just want to hear someone else's opinion or validate something. So I appreciate all three of you for offering those questions up. Because this is me pausing for a moment, having a sip of Pib Zero. Delicious. Okay, I'm going to keep watching the chat. because those three of you know a lot about Spark already. So I will assume you're most of the audience today. There's another person slipped in. That's awesome. So again, thank you for those great questions. I will absolutely at the end of the course, of course, at the end of the session, put some comments in there with links and stuff and that kind of stuff. Okay, just like we showed the a teeny taste of the RTD API, we just looked at a taste of the data frame API for PySpark. We looked at it from Starburst, but guess what? It looks the same to me. It's the same kind of functions, the kind of first order selects, filters, sorts, windowing, all that kind of stuff you can do from a more of a programmatic look to it. And then, of course, there's always that SQL function that you can just throw a bunch of SQL at it. And I like to think, oh, I see another question coming in. I'm gonna circle over there. Oh, I did take a function of something out. Um, I like to think pretty. Uh, it's more fun to write the API code, the actual functions, but I think in practice, I don't want to go show you one of those examples, but if you went to my blogs, you'd see it. There's a point when, wow, this is fun, but wow, this SQL block is more readable by just about everybody, because not everybody thinks in languages. All right. Decoupling compute and storage, HDFS, has compute and object store as storage. Which compute engine works best for simple batch workflow? Well, I think many engines work pretty decent for simple batch workflow. There was a couple, it seemed like there were some overloaded questions in there. So let me unwind a couple of them. It sounded like you were going to go down the path of trying to compare and contrast decoupling storage and compute versus storage and compute together, but then you said, oh, okay. So yes, in Hadoop, Hadoop is a clustering technology at its heart, at least. We put storage and compute together, did it for some pretty good reasons 16, 18, 20 years ago. There's some reasons we're doing separation again. A lot of that's due to cloud cost, dynamic spin up and spin down. But what compute engine works best for simple batch workflow? I would say it's fair. I'm being Lester. Guy's done this. I worked at Hortonworks and Caldera for 8 years. I've been gone from there about 4 years, primarily focused on Trino, a little bit on Apache NiFi. Um, Most likely, many of them are going to solve your problem, especially when you say a simple batch workflow. You're probably thinking mutually exclusive operations. I got a billion events coming off of sensors, and I just need to get them cleaned up, shored up, enhanced, tidied up, change the names a little, and then load them. For the most part, many of these engines work pretty well. They all work fundamentally the same about splitting things apart, etc. It really kind of comes down to first pass of what do you want to do it again? Like I said earlier, do you want to programmatically do those batch? And you're saying workflow, so I'm leaving out the workflow orchestrators. I'm just saying, okay, this big workflow says wake up, go look over here in S3, and there's probably some data for you. So I'm thinking about the code itself that's going to take it, lift it, shift it, lift and shift it, twizzle it, update it, and push it. Um, Obviously, I work at Starburst, so I'm going to tell you, oh my gosh, only Trino can do that for you. Trino can do that for you very well, but other frameworks can do that for you very well too. So that's a tough one. I will be a bum and say if I looked at, because I'm shameless self-promoting today. Let's see if I can find that one. Maybe Spark in the name of the tag. Let's see here. Spark. I did this blog post. Here we go. A little while back. And what are we talking about here? We're talking about Spark, Trino, and Hive. And you might have another framework you're thinking about, Links, another framework, so on and so forth. But I kind of made the point that, what are these engines trying to do? They're trying to have SQL performance and durability. And what I'm really trying to show you, give this timeline, I walk you through, when things surface and stuff, and I start building this table. Why am I doing that? Because I'm going to scroll to the bottom and say, eventually, they all got there, right? They eventually all can tackle performance. They all can tackle durability. They absolutely all can, use SQL if that's a driving factor. And I would encourage most of our business transformation, processing, whatever you call it, simple batch workflows probably have some kind of structured data. I heavily encourage to use SQL or SQL-ish functions like data frame API as much as possible. They all can do this for you. What costs the right point and all that kind of stuff. Those are decisions. And Jay, I would absolutely love to tell you, just use Starburst. All your problems are gone. Brought to you by Starburst. But that may or may not be exactly true with depending what you have going on. So I guess so sometimes it's going to come down to where's your existing investment? What are you really doing? If you're spending millions and millions of dollars on my good friends at Databricks and you're doing massive old modeling and stuff, and then you got a little bit of batch workload, you might go, hey, why would I change anything? Absolutely. But even if you don't, these other frameworks give you an opportunity to come along and say, hey, can I plug and play? So I'm not going to suggest that one big vendor is going to solve all your problems. And I would say that they could, more than likely, because limiting tools does allow you to focus on getting the job done. May not be the best way to do it always. So if you can do that approach, you can probably start to target workloads later. You can probably go back and someone like Starburst might go back to someone that has a big Databricks account and say, okay, maybe we can't help you here, but I notice half your spend is just updating BI dashboards. They're just running these queries. We might go, I could run that for you a whole lot faster and cheaper. And we might steal that workload and get our foot in the door. So, all right, again, try not to make it a sales pitch for us. All right, I don't know if I answered that for you. Mohammed says, going off topic a bit in terms of agenda. There is no agenda but questions. Mohammed, so we're on topic. Tree no beginner. And I've been helped by Lester and community a couple times. Oh, well, hopefully it was a good experience. Pardon me if I sound dumb. You do not. But does Trino have its own SQL dialect? I connected ClickHouse. More to been able to get credit. It's a bit different method, table creation. The truth is, we like to say, and our documentation will say this. We'll say we are an ANSI SQL compliant. Yeah, we don't want to have a dialect. We don't want to have a special twist. Now, I'm going to tell you that if you think, and if you could find it, show it to me. But if you think there's this perfect, simple document called the SQL standard and it lists functions and names and as checkboxes, that's not true. Because I went looking for that thing when I joined up here a couple of years ago. I had everyone here said, we're SQL compliant, ANSI SQL compliant, and Hive is, and Hive has HiveQL. I would say we're more right down the middle, perfect SQL as best we can, and we spend our life trying to be there. But there are going to be a function or two that looks a little different. So things are going to be a little different. And I would definitely say, if the question, Mohammed, was around a data definition language, creating a table, for example, I think that's what it's unable to create tables. So creation of tables, that's where we might be a little different because we aren't a database. We are a tool, a SQL engine that connects to lots of data sources. And some of those data sources are SQL engines themselves, like Oracle or something, BigQuery or something. But a lot of times, it's just a data lake. So that said, maybe some of our connectors we can't even create things through. Maybe some we can't do things. So connector by connector, we have choices. But for the data lake, which is what we're really probably thinking about here, yeah, that DDL looks different between Hive and Impala and Trino, mainly, but they all say the same thing. So yeah, there are some subtle differences how they express. Hey, how would I do partition? How would I indicate the location? What tells me it's an external table and those things? And I don't know what to say about that. That's just part of it. For sure. So hopefully that helps a little bit. I would still say that definitely post table creation, we don't have to explain all those data lake things like where is the data, what kind of file formats am I going to find, and that kind of stuff, and what other special options make sense for that choice. The above the line stuff, create table, column names, that should look and smell safe, and then absolutely querying for one-off answers, for analytical questions, etc. All right, Mohammed, if it wasn't good enough, you jump back in. Hey, he missed some of the discussion because Lester was boring. Oh, connectivity issues. Okay. Did I make? Oh, no, I didn't. That was the question I was looking for, Vinoj. I thought I saw that before we started. So I think you're saying that it seems like when you use the Hive connector, if I remember the question, if you use the Hive connector, then all your tables became external tables. And I would say we need to look at that together, offline together, or send, go post something on the community site. I'll put that there, or send Devrel or Lester a message and talk about it. Because when you create a table in the Hive connector, and I'll just show you. Sometimes seeing is better. Hi, let's call it Trino Hive connector. So you got to, I know I'm not suggesting that you're lying. I'm just suggesting I'm confused because the Hive Trino connector, for example, that you're talking about, when you create a table, if it'll load up, can't be reached. Trino dot, okay. Phew. I was about to get worried. Let's just see if I can find something as easy as create. Not that create. Nonetheless, when you create a table, there we go. Create table as SQL support. You get to do things like this down here at the bottom, the with clause. And this is really what I was talking to Mohammed about. The above the line stuff should be pretty normal, and the below line might not be so normal. And in fact, the table name may not be so normal. We have a three-part deal. But the question, what I'm trying to say is, when you say it defaults to an external table, then I don't know what's happening. It means either you're not supplying anything, and maybe there is a setting that says this one's set up this way. But generally speaking, unless we tell it a phrase called external location, which you don't see here. Let me see if I can find external location file. External location. Yeah. Unless you see this in a Hive catalog, like not only saying this property, but telling you where it is, we shouldn't, to my knowledge, have an external table be created. So let's talk about that one way or the other and see if we can unjam you because that makes not the doesn't make my head calculate correctly, and I don't want to help you figure out what's going on there. Okay, this is a great one, guys and gals. Everyone, thank y'all for coming today. I see another one. It's the same 4 or 5 people asking questions. Good stuff. Yeah, you're not. Yeah, I believe you. I believe you're not adding that, and I'm believing you that it is an external table. What I'm saying is we probably need to look at it because I don't have a quick answer. It shouldn't, to my knowledge. I mean, I didn't go up here and say, hey, is there a setting here called, always making an external table? The short answer, I don't think so, but we're going to figure that one out for you offline because I want you to do there. All right. Jay, and I'm just abbreviating your name, Jay, so apologies if that's the case. Jay, in terms of legacy SQL store procedures, SSIS packages, no, we don't have any public SSIS conversion tool or Teradata stored proc conversion tool. Um, I would say nobody has that I know of. When I say nobody's, Databricks, Cloudera, nobody, I don't think anyone has one of those tools, but I would say most professional services teams at those companies have gone through said exercises. I know I did one of those SSIS ones years ago, probably at least 10 years ago, and we did not have a tool, and we did a lot of walk by walk and try to figure out what we're going to do. But I was going to say that teams it might be a good question that we can get, a pre-sales person involved or professional services and try to find out. Maybe we don't have a public tool, but maybe we've done your particular problem once or twice. And I would say that for every vendor. Again, I'm not here to be a sales pitch today. If you're talking to, you know, Snowbricks or Data Flakes or whoever you're out there talking to, you're telling them your problem. You want to go to their platform. That's a gotcha. What can they do to help you? But no, we don't have a public tool that I'm aware of. Good stuff. Okay. Got a sure, got a thanks. Awesome. Awesome. I love this today. This has been great. If I've missed a question that you might have asked, ask it again. We had set up about 30 minutes. We're at the 30-minute mark, and that's cool. I'm going to hang around for a few more minutes and make sure it does die down nice and easy. I'm going to stop my deck here and just to let you, while we're talking, I'll flash through it and let you see what we were going to go through. We were going to talk about narrows and wides. We were going to talk about how shuttles are expensive. I'm sorry, shuffles, not shuttles. Shuffles. We were going to define basically what a task and stage and the job or queries are, and kind of wrap it up with that was the thinking that I was going to go through. But again, that was just there. Should we not have questions? We did great stuff today, and actually, again, they didn't have to be about Spark. We did seem to kind of resonate around Spark and data frame on a lot of these. All right. So with that said, I'm going to stare at the camera, look shiny, happy, and if you're hearing me now and you got nothing else other than waiting a minute to see if anyone else has a question, run off. I'll wait another 60 seconds or so, and then I'll do a shout out that I'm leaving. Again, thanks. I hope to see everyone next time we do this. I think I'm doing them about every 2 weeks now. I'd love to do it once a week, kind of like an office hours, if I get enough folks that are interested and get some value out of it. But I do want it to be useful and valid. All right, that's me monologuing for 60 seconds. I'm going to call today a very good success. I thought it was very useful. We'll have this recording. It'll be off available on LinkedIn Live if you're still here, and I'm going to post it up on YouTube for other folks to find it as well. And as always, as you see on the screen there, DevRel at starburst.io is a great place to go. And if it's Trino, Starburst, it can be anything, but especially in that space, there's a nice community forum site that I encourage you to go register for, ask some questions there. You get a lot of eyeballs. We have lots of other places, Trino, Slack, lots of places to find stuff. So if totally lost, DevRel at starburst.io will find me, and I will try to help you the best I can. All right, with that said, that's a big shout out. I'm hitting the leave button, and we'll see y'all the next time we do this. Thanks again.